Yo, what's going on, guys? Arekkz here. Welcome back to another video for Monster Hunter Rise, and today I thought I would kick off the return of another much requested series, something we've done in many of the Monster Hunter games in the past, and that is of course the top 5 weapons. Talking about my personal favourite weapons within a particular category, whether that be raw damage, elemental, or just style, because let's be honest, in Monster Hunter, looking badass is also incredibly important. So today, since we recently put out the weapon workshop for Sword and Shield, I thought we'd kick it off with Sword and Shield, one of my favourite weapons. So these are my personal top 5 Sword and Shields. Now obviously if you guys have a different list, let me know down below. Keep in mind, not all of these will be the highest damage. Some of them will be favourites for other reasons, status, element, or just because they look cool. So yeah, let me know your personal picks down below. But we have to kick it off with number 1. I would be remiss not to mention this one. It of course goes to the Naga Cougar Sword and Shield, the Flash in the Night. This is one of the best picks for this weapon. This is one of your few options for white sharpness. So of course, from a modifier point of view, it is incredibly potent. It does only have 180 raw attack when compared to some of the higher offerings, but you do have white sharpness, which of course is a hefty damage boost. On top of that, you have 30% affinity, which is insane. So this is a crit sharpness master. Now you do only have a tiny bit of white sharpness, but of course you can pair it with things like Razor Sharp or other skills that could of course help you stay on top of that. You do also have a level 2 slot, and keep in mind, if you guys caught the weapon workshop, you'll of course know that you know, shield basher combo is actually quite viable for this weapon. So you know, attacks with your shield do not deplete your sharpness. So if you were to play in that playstyle, and of course lean into a lot of shield attacks and saving your blade attacks for perfect rush and for the spinning reaper, then you can still make that white go further. But regardless, Naga Cougar Sword and Shield is an incredibly potent raw damage option, so if you're running for damage in Sword and Shield, consider checking this one out. However, moving on from there to pick number 2, not necessarily in order of greatness, just the second one on the list, and that is the Gosharag Sword and Shield, Mincing Blade 2. This one I had to pick. Firstly, irrespective of stats, I had to pick this one just from style. It is a giant meat cleaver made of ice. I mean, what is not to like? It's menacing. Gosharag is one of my favourite new monsters, so I just had to make this regardless. That being said, it's still quite interesting. It does have 220 raw, which is not the highest for Sword and Shield, but it is pretty high. It has a very tiny bit of blue sharpness and a tiny bit of green sharpness, so on the sharpness front, it is not that great. It has 11 ice damage, and it also has negative 15% affinity with a level 2 slot. So, you know, you do have affinity to worry about. However, don't forget, if you go to the ramp up skills, the Gosharag weapons are quite interesting because they do come with Brutal Strike, which is a skill that has a chance to increase your damage with a negative affinity attack. So you can actually lean into the fact that you do have negative affinity, which does yield some pretty impressive numbers with this. So this is actually quite a nice option, again on the raw damage front. Moving on from there to pick number 3, this goes to the Rathian Sword and Shield, the Princess Rapier 2, which of course is the fully upgraded version. This actually has quite nice raw alongside status. This of course is one of your poison options. Keep in mind for Sword and Shield, this is a weapon that, while it does have great raw damage potential, also excels at both elemental and status options. And of course, you know, I can't list all the elemental options in here. You know, you go through, if you want to build a fire weapon, find the highest fire one. You want to build a water weapon, find the highest water. But there are still a few within the status bracket that I do think are worth mentioning. And one of those is definitely this weapon. Again, 210 raw. It has blue sharpness, not a massive amount, but most weapons in this game, you know, you're looking at blue sharpness for a lot of things unless you're talking Naga. So white sharpness is quite a rarity. But this does have a nice amount of poison, 24 poison. It also has 10% affinity, so of course there is that boost. No slot on this one, but from a kind of from a status point of view, poison's just really nice, especially if you're playing in multiplayer. Sometimes things like sleep don't necessarily always work out well if you're playing online with randoms. People miss the kind of fall asleep and they just wake the monster up anyway. So poison is just a nice passive tick that you can kind of get away with. And factoring in that this also has nice raw, then you'll actually be able to maintain a pretty good poison uptime whilst dishing out some damage. So it's just some nice passive ticks. After that, we then need to turn our attention to the Diablos tree, the Spiked Bat. This is the raw damage monster. Now, yes, obviously, you know, when you're talking about raw damage builds, you have a couple of options. You can lean more into sharpness with the Naga Cougar option, or you can just go full on into raw with the Diablos option, which of course has 230 attack, the highest in the Sword and Shield. It does have blue sharpness, not the biggest chunk, but a decent chunk. And it does have negative 5% affinity, but 5% is actually really easy to negate. You can quite simply gem that out, and that will be no problem whatsoever. whatsoever. It's not like you're dealing with like a big amount like minus 15% or 20%. So that's relatively easy to work around. It does have no slots. However, the useful thing for this, again, going back to what I mentioned at the beginning, don't forget that, you know, if you are leaning into the hard basher combo, which again is a great damage option for sword and shield, hard basher combo into spinning Reaper, hard basher into a KO, and then straight into perfect rush, you then, again, keep in mind you maintain your sharpness because the shield attacks do not deplete your sharpness. So really, you're only using that blue for the spinning Reaper and for the perfect rush. So this is actually, you know, a really nice raw damage KO setup. So yeah, you can definitely get some good value out of the Diablos offering. Now, in at number 5, this is kind of a mixed one. I've actually thrown 2 into here just to sort of give you a couple of mentions. If you want paralysis, really, I want to say your only option is this one. There is a second paralysis option. You do, of course, have the cat sword and shield, but this one has a little bit of blue sharpness, quite low on the raw front, only 160, but it does have 3 level 1 slots, so of course it is quite nice from a sort of a gemming things in capacity. But paralysis, much like I said with poison earlier, is quite a nice passive abnormal status for use in multiplayer, because again, if a monster gets paralyzed, it's not like somebody is going to mess up the wake up. So this is you know, a decent option if you want to lean into paralysis, but this is definitely more so for the status players. And similarly, if you do want to lean into sleep, you want to go to the sleep bombing playstyle, then the baggy option, the Morpheus knife, is probably my pick just because it's higher on the sleep front, lower on the raw damage front. You do have the shell studded option alternatively, but that's pretty low on the sleep front. So this one, 2 level 1 slots, which of course again are nice from a gemming point of view, and it's just you know, a decent pick for sleep. Plus, it's incredibly easy to craft, so this is a weapon you can get pretty early on in the game. It doesn't go beyond rarity 4, but regardless, it's a sleep option. And then finally, as a quick bonus mention, I've gone through the 5 already, but this one is here purely from an aesthetic point of view. It's not a bad weapon, but the Bishaten Sword and Shield, the SHAUCHA PUREBLADE, I like this one purely because it reminds me of the Hero's Blade. For those of you guys that remember that one, there was of course the sword that you would pull out of the stone, and I just love that one from a design point of view. I just thought it was incredibly cool, and this definitely reminds me of that weapon. It's not a bad weapon. It's got decent raw, it's got some blue sharpness, it's got a nice level 3 slot, but considering some of the other available raw options, you wouldn't typically lean into this one. So this is definitely more so a pick just because I like this weapon as opposed to anything else. Anyway, there you have it for the time being. That is my personal top 5 picks for Sword and Shield. Again, if you guys have got ones that you like yourself, by all means mention them down below. And we will be doing these for all the other weapons as we kind of work through the workshops, as we kind of go. So definitely stick around for more, and we'll be sharing those as we go. If you want to catch more from us at Arekkz Gaming, don't forget you can catch the guys 269, Paradise Central and Investmore streaming over on Twitch weekdays, playing a variety of games. If you guys want to jump in, tune in, watch and even join in, then make sure you check them out. The links to those are in the description box down below, and of course you can join the Discord to get involved in all of the discussions.